Okay, yeah, I was wanting to talk about some information about um Elton John's song "Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds." Um, all that information. It seemed to be about like the Chevrolet Geo Prism and the Hyundai Excel, about one of the largest shipments in the port of Houston. Um, and the Marmalade Sky. It seemed to be a certain factor about a weekend representing two. Um, and in addition, there's the thing about um, Chevrolet Geo Prism and Hyundai Excel. You've probably heard it before. I'm assuming that it was, deriving um, from some source, ultimately being by word of mouth as parental gesture in terminology. And I don't really like saying old sayings, um, but it seemed to be the thing about them, excel above the rest was like the thing about it. And it seemed to be the thing about the identical twin rainbow. And I'm actually trying to place some connectivity between like a student loan and a Pell Grant or foster granting and adoption as relation in architecture, platform embedding encryption of computer programming and language. Um, I'm trying to think about that with the Boolean chart. The Chevrolet Geo Prism seemed to be it presents De Beers diamonds as the prism, yet with the M is in, I'd mentioned this previously in an earlier video, but it seemed to be, that in alphanumeric, in linguistic alphanumerics, that, and the two center letters being M and M is in 13 is 14, 14 is 13, and, it's like 55, heaven and sky, okay? Thing with this is that um, with that particular make and model of the Chevrolet Geo Prism, with the prism spelt with a Z, and the MSN applied to, with the Geo Prism is Geo Prism, it becomes the 109 is 110, which is actually the alphanumerics is 247. Um, and it seemed to be, an automatic, connectivity with the United States Secretary of Treasury, Robert E. Rubin. Um, and in many ways, other than, the difference of like, um, his name being 147 and 100, or what the 100 Club is, and in a way of like Vantage Love 30, and 30 being spelled out being like 100, okay, or Secret de Facto, or the thing about a bicentennial quarter. Um, in any case, yeah. So like ultimately it gets to some information. It seemed to be that all that connectivity of like the Beers Diamonds, the European German owned. Um, I don't know if it was referred to as a company or just raw mining for diamonds. In any case, all that information had led to like South Africa. Um, and with that information, I'm actually trying to place excelling above the rest. Other than the thought of like um, Lockheed Martin's like two arrows, four lines with their intersecting axes, and the five signature triangles on the wall at the location of federal, state, and local authorities. The color code of orange. Okay. The thing with this is that it presents that HTTP colon by being the back to back of the double forward slash of the design of you know where that's at. Yeah. So like in case so like um the De Beers diamonds it kind of like refers to mining raw diamonds in South Africa. Predominantly, it's analytical in the way of like Johannesburg. It being an alphanumerics 130 in like Washington. Okay. The thing with it is that um when the map is actually folded, you probably heard it, and I think I might have mentioned this on audio. I'm not sure if I did it with the video talking about it. I know I talked about it on the audio, but you probably heard that song, my Angel Lucis Centerfold. And think about, like a symmetrical, asymmetrical, like a 180 centerfold flip, like folding the map. That information with like the Beers Diamonds in South Africa being like Johannesburg, refers to it indirectly as like the Persian Gulf in Egypt. Ultimately, even the Sahara Desert. But the thing is that if the map is folded at a 180, it's a symmetrical, asymmetrical, and flipped like at a 90, it's like Washington D.C. and Houston. Um, And when it's done like that, I mean, it's like, I mean, the halo symbolic representation on the left side between the C and the PTIs on the back side of the US $1 bill. I mean, what would be the one that goes beyond 58, alphanumerically, like the McDonald's um, hot cafe coffee cup. It really is those actual letters and alphanumeric values of the three most simplest computation of that symbolic representation. Um, I mean, it's like 58, okay, but the thing with this is that it goes beyond that, okay, and it gets into what seemed to be would be normally the first thought of like a vertical line being just one, and like one of the oldest national landmarks of like Highway 59. Beyond that 58, it seemed to be, I mean, it that way, and how it like Highway like 59 equals 140 in parallel sexes and alphanumerics and attenuation and holy miracles and all that stuff about it. Yeah, so like a in any case, so like a anyway, the De Beers diamonds, it kind of like identifies that, but when the map is folded at a 180 being a asymmetrical like 180, my angel is a centerfold, and at a 90 degree, that's actually the way it really is in the halo left side of that symbolic representation between the C and the PTIS. I mean, it's the exact same thing about what looks like, a straight line of like maybe the longitude. What would be like that first thought of maybe just one more being 59, but realizing something about it at a 90 degree. Um, and like Diners Club, their symbol. But the thing with this is that you probably heard that due west about, the compass and thing about, yeah, the thing about, navigation. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, so like in any case, so like what would normally be like one vertical line, the thought of just like one being like at a 90 degree, the thing with this is that um, instead of it actually going to the right, it's going to the left, and it becomes a 90 degree, yet a pi r squared, yet it's really an E equal MC squared, and ultimately gets to the exponential quotients of power multiplication. That information and Secrets of the Temple, how the Traders overruns the country about Europe, German owned company like mining for raw diamonds in South Africa is predominantly analytically, like Johannesburg, and the alphanumerics of 130 in Washington. The thing with this is that song's kind of like, my angel is centerfold when the map is actually folded and flipped at a 90 degree. I'm just like Washington and like Houston area, the alphanumerics of Harris. I mean, it takes it straight to the Egypt thing and the Persian Gulf and, like ultimately even Sahara. And, think about Sarah and Sahara, because I believe it was the Sahara Desert. I'm trying to place my memory about it biblically in the King James Version Bible about Sarah, okay? Because it's like a principle of the baptism, okay? The Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. The thing about Sarah, Abraham, and Joseph, it's like symbolic and analytical, like the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost and all that information. Of a baptism. Yet it's like Sarah. There's something about her, and it's in. And I'm actually trying to place my memory if it's actually in the Sahara. But the Sahara with the HA, not in it. It's like 8 and 1 being like 9, and the I 9, and hopefully in anatomy EYE being 35. Yeah, so like the thing about it's like even the baptism between the Father and Son and Sarah, and the thing about the tent. I've kind of like heard it that way, kind of like taught that way, but it's kind of like I'm trying to actually place the memory, and I'm not sure if it was just like taught two different ways or combined in explanation. I'm trying to remember if it's actually in the Sahara Desert, but all the alphanumerics, it presents all that in there. But the thing with this is that it presents that with my angel as a centerfold, and it flips 180. It's kind of like a 180 of a panoramic academia, a peripheral tolerance. I kind of like refer to that sometimes because sometimes that's like a marginal spread that gets to a whole different point. But in any case, yeah. So like I mean, ultimately, it's like America, and think about Utah and the Mormon Church, and certain factors that seem to be identifying the American religion in that way, and it seemed to be almost like something American Legion baseball, like pledging allegiance to the flag. And it's almost like pledging allegiance to like the American Legion baseball. I mean, for real. I'm just kind of like where's human capital and all that carbon footprint in absentee voting. Um, I mean, it's kind of like maybe the known fact that maybe you should have went to a Mormon church, the American Religion Church, and maybe not assume that it would be the automatic thought that hey, like you're on North American continent, um, and maybe not ignore the fact. But in any case, yeah. So like it seemed to be that it ultimately gets to all that information like Washington and the Houston area that way, but alphanumerically, it's like once again Harris and Egypt and ultimately the Israeli thing. But in case, kind of like it gets through that in that way. And the thing about, geoprism is geoprism spelled with a Z, and the M is in, and geoprism is geoprism. Geoprism is geoprism, yeah. And I was kind of like want to kind of like mention that because of the map, and it seemed to be that all that information um, is getting to the point of almost like an Elton John song of 1972, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Um, because ultimately, the thing about all this information, I mean, it's ultimately getting to like what's going on like right now, um, and like pro bono, and ultimately, I'd mentioned it before about, you've heard it your whole life, being taught that the double V is pronounced W, and with all the information on supplemental security income, it has really, got to the thought of, benefits that's been provided. Yet at the same time, it seems that San Antonio is something about, remember the Alamo. Yeah, it's almost like the thing about like Taco Bell as like a thing, but it's really in my mind like Del Taco and for amber waves of grain. But the thing with it is that it's almost like the Alamo's like in pronunciation like alimony. Um, and the word is relation. Okay, is that the word is relation in degree terminology. Relation, it's not necessarily. I mean, I'm sure that's included, but the degree definition of relation and architecture platform embedded encryption is about computer programming and language. Um, and sequencing characterization in sets of six. I mean, sequencing characterization in sets of four in programming and language. Okay. Um, in principles of digital audio, I mean, it's sequencing characterization in sets of six, like in audio or MP3 format. In any case, to make that clear, yeah, sequencing characterization in sets of four. Okay. Um, and it seems to present that with like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And it's like to excel above the rest, the Chevrolet Geo Prism and the Hyundai Excel. Um, and I'm kind of like hearing something in a way that seemed to be like almost like Trump saying "Make America Great Again," and it seemed to be that one weekend, if my memory serves me correctly, it was on a Sunday. That the sky was so orange. I mean, I'm trying to remember what came first, the Marmalade Sky or Elton John song. And I'm kind of wondering if that was like a rejected estimate option in the future, as if it would be like Haley's Comet, like it's a known fact it's going to happen and when it's going to happen. And I'm kind of like wondering, I never heard anything about it or what the real situation is, but I mean, it's like the one time that if there would be anything about, monetary and domestic involving a Surgeon General and like a Stargate program as like a neighborhood, I mean, probably more than likely would have really been that. It's kind of like Trump saying "Make America Great Again." It's kind of like almost in my mind. It's the word relation. I mean, Where's the deed restriction? Is there a deed restriction reflecting relation? And if so, I mean, like, where's it at? I mean, ultimately, it's getting to, like, remember the Alamo. And so, like, where's it at? What is the real issue with 1972? And it seemed to be like other information that links Kobe ID 19 to Alpha America's 72 and money. And the thing about Brown, it only gets to, some factors that seem to be whether or not if litigation de facto writs of habeas corpus is just the idea that the fact that the lifespan of de facto is kind of like presented an issue whether or not if a deed restriction is just automatically turning television on. Just being in a neighborhood with a K television, it's like I mean a deed restriction like virtually almost in my mind, based on a lot of things that seem to really be presented as some idea of programming and what a kernel really is, in proper numerical composition between the kernel, Lincoln, and Kennel, and yeah. So I mean, Angel's a centerfold, huh? And I mentioned a little bit of humor about certain factors that seem to be whether or not it seemed to be like also the Marmalade sky. It seemed to be the night vision of like Jesus said he knew you before infrared and infragreen, and it's like that color of Del Taco that is a California thing. The thing about Taco Bell seemed to be like remember the Alamo in a way. I kind of like I kind of find it kind of hard to think about something about alimony, but the thing with it is that I'm actually trying to place that somewhere in my mind as what kind of connectivity with supplemental security income. What does it really mean in like international financial management or ventures and mergers or and proceedings that would only affect whether or not if alimony is just an arbitration and negotiation, or terms that was maybe the thought of maybe I don't know if I would choose the word mandated, but the thing is that I'm actually trying to place how that is involving like Geneva, Switzerland, because it seemed to be the San Antonio, the place of the Alamo, it just seemed to have the connectivity of Lexus LFSA and something about EBT, electronic benefits transfer, and it seemed to be connected in my mind like to pro bono. I'd mentioned about the W that's really a double B, and the lead singer for like U2, okay, like Bono, and and anatomy, the humerus bone, okay. I don't know if I would really suggest it as a forecast or orthopedic in a way of like the spore stone, what is used to actually replace damaged or missing bone. It's like stone in the ocean, identified as the spore stone. I'm not sure if that's the only term used is the spore stone. It sounds like a category to me, but in orthopedic surgery, replacing missing or damaged bone, and the way I've only heard it is that it's the only stone. And I don't know if I would even recognize if it was identified by if it just has to be an orthopedic medical type of term. It may have been mentioned and me not really recognize it at the time while I was listening. But I've only heard it as the spore stone, okay? And they say that when the bone grows through it, that it's actually stronger than it was previously. And something, like that kind of like happened about, going through the Stargate program again. And a lot of air raids going on and realized that I've been operated on. And it seemed to be something about like 1992 involving what was available as games like of Mousetrap and Monopoly and the thing about the game Operation. I'd heard a reference. It didn't seem to be like anything of any connectivity that references like parental guidance and every cloud has a silver lining. Which is actually, just like that game Operation, okay, at the time of Mousetrap, okay, and like Monopoly, and some idea of like the Ouija board, okay. In any case, so like it seemed to be like that Elton John song of the Marmalade Sky. It would be like something in my mind, of like a Friday. I actually went to sleep in my brother's room. I'm actually trying to place where he was and what year it was really. It may have been 1972, but it was that weekend of the Marmalade Sky. And I'm not sure what came first, the Elton John song or the Marmalade Sky, but I mean it was like unlike any other like sky. I mean the entire sky. I mean it was like almost saturating the curtain and coming into the room. It was so orange, was unreal. Um, I mean for real, like to this day, the orangest sky in my entire life that I've seen. Okay, and I'm not sure if that's like somewhere in astrology, if that's something that could be maybe anticipated as going to happen. I'm not sure what the deal is. I didn't hear really much about it. It's not like I was even trying to hear anything about it really anyway. But it seemed to be that if there would be any of the weekend representing like two, and it seemed to be, almost like I'd heard it, in detention center county that, something about, certain people, like you don't have to go to court, okay. It's kind of like it's like a 2 year period that had only been mentioned that certain people didn't even go to court, but stayed 2 years. But the thing is that going through a military bureau determinant, it seemed to be, I mean, the thing about the 2 years, um, and that one Marmalade orange sky, the orange being of the county and detention center, it's almost like the agent thing. I don't really want to say Agent Orange. I mean, like really, truthfully at all. But I'm thinking about something about the sky, and what were the real conditions in the atmosphere. Um, what was that really about? And I'm trying to remember if that song with Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds with Elton John talked about that Marmalade Sky. Yet it seemed to be a protected estimate like Chevrolet Geo Prizm and the Hyundai Excel of the, like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and all that information I was hearing about, to excel above the rest. Ultimately, it led to like the Inuit compass on the backside above the pyramid, to excel above the rest, and ultimately even the colors of the rainbow of a hot air balloon. But I was kind of like thinking about that, and I'm actually trying to keep my direction with my thought about this particular issue. But it seemed to be that if there was like anything about like it's kind of like I'd mentioned, I'd called and it was speaking to a direction of about hey, is that like a deed restriction between someone's legs? I mean, what's the real issue about relation? Yeah, so I mean, so like really, I kind of like to hear what that really means as whether or not if a carbon footprint and absentee voting, manufacturing the thought of like having fair use of the lifespan of de facto, it's just the mere words coming out of my mouth and really everything that's been going on. And I mean, it seemed to be like going all the way back to like 1972, and the alphanumerics of 72, and even the color of money, and the thing about 1972 and like COVID ID 19 being 72 thing is that that's like the world and the thing about school and and certain other factors. But the thing is that it seemed to be that really ultimately, I mean, if that's actually a, a manufactured issue that's been an experience without really kind of like realizing certain factors that seem to be reflecting terminology that's ultimately got to the thing about now it seemed to be like center point energy, a region 2 of Europe having fair use of region 0. Center point energy is like in my mind automatically like something about the halo left side of that symbolic representation. Um, but likewise, I had mentioned that that like in that halo left side, I mean, all that information about it identifies like the E in calculus, yet the EE in quantum, and the structure in alphanumerics over just like one line, would be ultimately the very minimum requirement, yet kind of like at a max, and going beyond that of like the alphanumerics of 58, or the thought of like McDonald's a hot cafe coffee cup, or the thing about, fake news that Trump refers to seem to be ultimately, like a wooden buffalo nickel about coffee. But the thing with this is that it's ultimately like a Roe v. Wade issue as well. In the alphanumerics of 94, and Roe with the W is pronounced the same, but the alphanumerics is 61. Ultimately, the news and a miracle, which is like based on my birth year, like right now, January 2026. Excuse me. Likewise, in addition, it's kind of like, well, I mean, is it really a manufactured deal about Roe v. Wade? About, is there like a deed restriction between my legs over Roe v. Wade? And just because, like, my name is Wade? Yeah, so, like, where's it at? So, what's the real issue about fake news? Is it that the word wooden of a wooden buffalo nickel with one D is like 76, with two D's, it's like 80, and with three D's, it's like 84? Like embassy or like states, plural. Um, 84 lumber ultimately is like, embassy or states, like lumber being 71 in Pearland, okay? And, the idea that fake news is only based upon recognizing alphanumeric value in pronunciation would be in my mind, like I'm already like 61 years of age now, okay? And the thing with this is that, I find it hard to believe that really anything about anything um, going on like during my life has been like fake news. Um, the only thing about maybe it being fake is not knowing anything about linguistic alphanumerics, which really began for me, like, I mean, really after a baptism of June 14th, 1992, and experiencing something that ultimately led to, like, going through a circuit. Um, Ultimately, thinking about what I think about, the Social Security Administration's phone number, 1-800-772-12 and 13, and 12 and 13 being like legal media, the L&M, legal media, and Lockheed Martin. And ultimately, like Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania being the thing about really ultimately, Social Security Administration's Network Operations Center. In my mind, it's automatically, about a baptism like of a century based upon my birth year. Not that my birth year is the only, but it seems that my birth year is so HTTP colon and 64 in American and movie and music minus A and Israel. I mean, my birth year seems to be, and combined with like a 19 and 64, added together be like 83. And winner, 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 winner. Yay, okay. So, like, yay, all right. So, like, any case. But it seemed to be like the MSN being like 64 and 65 becoming 83 and 84. Like 1964 being 83 and 1965 being, 84. And, the reference to, the idea of the Social Security Administration's telephone number ultimately really gets that. It really gets to that. But it's not limited to, just because it's my birth year. It's just that it's HTTP :/, and like an American being 64, and all that stuff about the alphanumerics of 64, including like music minus A, and think about quite a bit the PTIS and all that stuff. So like anyway, so like that's kind of like thinking about that because of all that information. It just seemed to me that the Social Security Administration's telephone number had maybe identified, the Wood Buffalo Nickel at the same time, and the fake news at the same time, based upon, chronological of, alphanumeric from A to Z, then 1 to 26, and repeatedly, from 27 to like 52, then 53 to like 78, then 79 to 104 is the automatic first four chronologicals from A to Z, alphanumerically. Yeah, so like, it's kind of like all that, finding and realizing something about that is kind of like I was like referring to a little bit of humor, um, and Billie Jean's not my lover. It's just Kenny Burrows saying, Billy White Shoes Johnson's the one. Yeah, because it seemed to be like a pasty symbol about the white shoes is really, something in my mind of the pasty color sound 900. A lot of Christianity had like given reference, and a lot of Christians watch movies that show like people back in biblical times, like washing each other's feet. I experienced something based upon consumption that actually was like a perception of like feeling like it going like through my body, okay, down to my legs, okay, with 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 water that I purchased at Kroger, okay. Um, and I mean, I felt it like going down my legs, and I thought, oh God, what's going on? And I felt it, and I thought, well, it's already like too late to like call anyone about it. So I just waited. But anyway, it was kind of like pressure was like building up in my lower legs, okay. And it got to the point to where I thought that maybe it would probably be a good idea to maybe to get like hot water and a foot massage to like maybe loosen whatever the deal is and open up my pores and allow it to like seep through the pores of my skin. And it did. Not all of it. I mean, a minimum percentage like came out, but it's like a generous amount the first time of like a white film, a pasty film covering my feet and my skin. Up above my ankles, a little bit below my lower part of my calf. Um, and me being a drummer, okay. Really, with everything that's been going on, okay. And you can see me on my channel at WadeASVPriddy, PRDDY, YouTube.com. And I'm talking about quite a bit about that because, as a drummer, I'm normally a Zilton A custom symbol, but knowing that pasty is a symbol, and considering quite a bit about going through the Stargate program. This is after I went through the Stargate program, which seemed to be like every day going on, really, um, potentially. But anyway, yeah. Me being a drummer, automatically I'm thinking pasty symbols and having a right to a symbol. And, the thing about Zilton being like manufactured in Switzerland, okay. I'm not real sure actually if it's in Geneva, Switzerland. I know it's Switzerland, okay. And it's automatically the summit meetings. Like the summit here in Houston, okay, is like a whole lot of concerts, okay. During the 80s, okay. Um, then it turned, the Houston Rockets moved into it as a summit. Then it changed to Compact Center, and now it's a Lakewood, okay. The thing is that as a drummer, that was my first thought when I'm seeing all the film. The pressure built up quite a bit. Was squirting through my skin at certain points. Really not cool at all. Um, really not cool at all. But I'm thinking like, wow, like what's that all about? That's my first thought. It's the summit meeting because I was actually taken to a summit meeting of like where the Lexus LFSA was in 1995, and a lot was going on in 1995, and including the being venue of human civil rights and going through the circuit. It just seemed like becoming itemized going to the circuit um, of human capital on the expenditure side, okay? And, going beyond a Bluebird bus, it seemed to be now the thing about, the American Express Bluebird prepaid card, yet at the same time, I was placed on an Airbus H-160, and I don't remember about it quite a bit for, I'm real sure, a 1 year period of a lot of air raids going on, okay? Hopefully, the real thing about, military bureau determined, okay? Um, but I'm within my capacity of, the memory of like, a 25 to going on 30-year period had passed. I like knew that it's taking place, but I didn't realize that. I didn't even consider it a Stargate program at that time or anything beyond what I'd unknown for a few places, that was like not a normal place, but yet not a Stargate program. When my memory actually was like triggered in a way of like memory coming back as, it's like almost in my mind now, like a Vantage Love 30, because I'm almost for certain that the military knows that it's probably going to be probably automatically, probably a minimum, like right at a 30-year period that probably if television or entertainment, whatever the case is, really involved with it, doesn't like remind something about it. I'm almost for certain that remembering anything about it would probably be not a reality. That being that way, and the way it's really, it's kind of like it kind of like reflected and rejuvenated the memory of the mind's eye of a real seriously intense. I'm not even sure if it was like 2 years, okay? Um, but it seemed to be the thing about that one weekend of the Marmalade Sky, of the Elton John song. I was in my brother's room and I actually went to sleep around somewhere around 4 or 5, maybe. It's like right when I got home from like school, okay? And I woke up thinking it was going to be only a couple of hours later. And it was like, Sunday evening. And when I woke up, I mean, the sky was so orange. And I mean, it's like coming through the curtains. And, it kind of seemed to be, now it's kind of like, Trump saying like America great again. It's kind of like make America great again. It almost seemed like something about, certain factors is really kind of taking place and involving, whether or not if the $6 million man is just, the thought of maybe several games at the age of 8, maybe 9, in like 1972, of like Monopoly, Mousetrap, and Operation, and reference to like every cloud has a silver lining. I mean, if that's ultimately going to be the idea of the alphanumerics of 35, or memory minus de facto, or the thought that every cloud have a silver lining would be the idea of like a jet. Um, and what jet? The thing with this is that ultimately, going through the Stargate program and included, certain factors of the World Trade Center, really 1995, based on my experience, really, shown as 2001. And I'm not real clear. I mean, what it does, but it seemed to be, knowing what I've seen, like, of the 1992 presidential inaugural ball, I'd seen and heard a little bit and about, like, manufactured human genetic cloning, okay, beyond, like, the idea of twins, quintuplets, octa-quadruplet, quintuplets, It's kind of like, wow. But anyway, it seemed to be like during that inaugural ball of 1992 that there were, like, identical locations. I mean, virtually everything about it looked identical, but I had kind of like seen and experienced something like that around the Houston area, and seen it kind of like experienced a little bit of something about that. Just like seeing it and really, really knowing that that's really what I'm saying, Anyway, so it kind of seemed to be like something about that, of that one particular year of 1992, and the William Jefferson, Al Gore, and like Chevy Chase, like a presidential inaugural ball, and I was kind of like looking at that, thinking that's exactly what I was thinking, because I mean, it's kind of like almost like something previously like that had been like that at different locations. Yeah, watching on TV looked like it was at actually different locations, but looking virtually, I mean, identical. Or whether for pre-recorded or anything like that. But in case, yeah, so like, yeah, I was kind of like thinking about that because of certain factors. But yeah, where I was going in that direction, it seemed to be that the thing about Elton John's song about Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, they seemed to present all that information, 6 to the temple, how the third is overruns the country. Yet it seemed to be the weekend of the two, yet in color code of like the orange and county, and like, the 10 centers is known to be like everything, like federal, state, and local, as compared, sometimes counties like referred to, but it's like the orange thing about it, okay? In any case, but it seemed to be the thing about, reference that certain factors about like not going to court, it seemed to be like really a 2-year period of an extremely intense, I can really only account for probably the most intense of a 1-year period that actually originated after our screensaver, okay? A Microsoft screensaver, UF's Most Wealthiest Museum, once again. And then ultimately certain music videos that had obviously been used like in it about the mind's eye. But in any case, it only been in my mind, if I mean, if it's my maximum capacity as a memory of the mind's eye, I'm grasping maybe at a 1-year period. I mean, like at the most. But the 2-year, I mean, as far as like linguistic alphanumerics and everything that I know of like the sets of 2 in that way, I'm almost assuming that would be almost the, in the event of an actual emergency, would have been told where to tune into. Yeah, we interrupt our regular scheduled programming so that we may bring you what might not be recognized as a 2-year period. Yeah, and it seemed to be like really that for real. But So like any case, so like there's like a 2 year period. It's like kind of referred to with the color code of orange. Okay, but that it seemed to be really something about that in 1972. Trump saying "Make America Great Again." It's almost like I'm seeing my blood vessels on my arms stand up. Okay, and it's kind of like it almost seems to be like the $6 million man being a $52 million man, and realize that going through the Stargate program that I've been operating on didn't even really recognize it. I mean, so much was going on. I mean, that wasn't really the immediate thought, but like ultimately, it's like Elton John singing that song, Benny and the Jets, and at Soul Train, and he's leaning from side to side, and he's grabbing his collar like it's television program between my friend Flicka and Lassie of like a color code of like during the JFK administration, Lincoln Kennedy to the Colonel and the Kennel and Lincoln as a color code of television program in the history of television screen. That seemed to be the thing about the monochrome and the grayscale that even the Astros seem to be had used with all their orange because they used the five. My memory serves me correctly. The Houston Astros used only 5 colors of the orange with the 5 shades of grayscale, and then the 6 and the 10, and like it wasn't all in chronological that way. But I'm almost for certain that I'd seen it that way with the grayscale, and it seemed to be the factor of like, identifying the midnight blue, which is the first number of the prefix of the White House, 4, 5, and 6, the 4, and the remainder of the 5 and 6. The thing about Papermate being like 5610, ultimately 94, annotated adoption and abortion, and automatically in my mind, think about Roe v. Wade, and the color codes of like what annotated is in color code. When I got into linguistic alphanumerics, I mean, I really got into it and spent, way beyond like not cool hours about just kind of like fascinated, impressed, and yet a lot was going on at the same time, and like I never really stopped. I mean, me thinking about anything new is just like what I've already really kind of covered, and like finding something new, it's not really a surprise because it's happened enough times to realize that hey, I'm looking right at it, and realizing something new in a way is kind of like it's almost like not funny, kind of almost like not cool, but almost fascinating. Why didn't I recognize it like that? Well, see, I mean, previously before like 1992, I wasn't like really thinking anything about linguistic alphanumerics, and when I did, it was really only a result of like looking for answers after baptism, experiencing something, what seemed to be like a mental magnetic, uplifting of the mind. Okay, after a baptism, okay, a Mormon baptism, okay, in Friendswood, Texas, once again, on Flag Day, June 14th, 1992, a Saturday SAT thing. And years later, I'm not sure which, but it seemed to be something that seemed to be the thing of like the police in synchronicity of the color code and of a rainbow, not limited to an identical twin rainbow being like in synchrony. In synchronicity, it's almost like a baptism in synchronicity. And it seemed to be about the same time of my baptism, somewhere between like 9 a.m. and 11. It was pretty much pretty close to, the time on a Saturday morning. But that identical twin rainbow in Fort Stockton, Texas, it's like automatically in my mind something about the Chevy Chase movie Best Defense, using that laser from a satellite from outer space, and they're sitting at a poolside. Chevy Chase on the map in Washington, D.C. is all around, all about the United States Department of Education. Being by the poolside, it's like a defaulted student loan in collection called a pool. That laser coming from outer space is a laser, okay? It's red, okay? And it shatters the glass, okay? But it's like at the poolside, and in terminology with a defaulted student loan, combining student loan with a Pell Grant, ultimately it becomes the idea of like what would be the idea of legal equity as Al-Anon, presenting the presence of what would give the appearance of family law, but yet as an in-law and indirectly not involved, like foster granting and adoption, like combining a student loan with a Pell Grant. Yet a defaulted student loan in collections is like what is really almost considered like tax-free. It's almost like anyone that can get anything about a defaulted student loan. It's like tax-free. It's like it's led to believe that the guarantor and it's like it's already like really paid for anyway. But I mean, collections ultimately, I mean, over 15, 20 year period, they call it some idea of forgiveness. The thing of it is that it's like in collections, it's like it's presented like almost like free and clear. Um, Yet it's like having the right to assemble as a pool. Yet ultimately, it almost represents the same thing as a 1040 EZ form of like a percentage that is actually paid as tax. Yet a full refund on that percentage means the whole amount is like the full amount. Um, yeah, that's identifying an entire annual um, and a percentage of that tax representing a full refund on a percentage. And the full amount means I mean like the full amount. And the color code of the United States President Air Force One. But anyway, yeah. So like all that information is kind of like what I've been thinking about, and it seemed to be that those sets of two had ultimately got to the idea about Trump saying, make America great again, and it seemed to be almost like an anatomy about blood flow and circulation. Seemingly now, the idea of like the pituitary gland, the way I've heard certain factors, and the humerus bone, actually going through the Stargate program and realizing and waking up and not even realizing it immediately. I mean, I even recognize having to lean from side to side that that during the Stargate program, I mean, I was operating on, didn't know a dang thing about it, wasn't told about it, didn't plan on it. I mean, I just was like waking up, and over a period of time, I was in like really not anything other than like a real serious condition, and ultimately even using the restroom, I mean, became the noticeable thing about having to lean from side to side, and then realizing, but there was a lot going on, and that was, I mean, noticeable, but not, I mean, it really not the immediate concern. I mean, like other issues were like really going on, that ultimately led to me being placed, um, in an Airbus H160, what ultimately seemed to be in my mind, taking to Geneva, Switzerland, to the being venue of human civil rights, in my mind, being coming, the itemized thing about human capital on the expenditure side, and taking to the being venue of human civil rights seemed to be, like where's the deed restriction, where's all that human capital in the method of banking? I mean, if the colonel's like ultimately, the idea of like litigation, de facto or habeas corpus is what deed restrictions, or is it just the idea of lifespan of de facto being manufactured, and even realizing, I mean, anything about it would be really, I mean, ultimately a kind of like a really a turning point that led to alphabetics, because I wasn't finding the answers I was like looking for in the King James Version Bible, and started looking in the Mormon Bible, because I mean that's where I was baptized. But normally I was like going to like a church with my parents, which means like virtually every church. The Mormons came to my home here and actually invited me there, which actually led to that baptism um, on Flag Day, and hopefully now it seems to be like a Six Flag baptism on Saturday morning, June 14th, 1992, since it's Flag Day. And since all that alphanumerics of 6 is like a VPN and 52, and not like the heartbeat of America, and all that stuff about the alphanumerics of 6 is only like a Michael Jackson song in my mind. It's easy as 1 2 ABC 1 2 3 1 2 3 ABC, and like Route 66. And in my mind, it's like the Psychic Warrior, America's foremost psychic spy, and the cover up of the Top Secret. To me, it's almost like the Better Business Bureau Bird Bat Baptism, identifying as Six Flags baptism on June 14th on Flag Day. But now it seems to be leading to like VSAT communications of like pro bono. I mean, all that took place, and like when I was like watching Elton John and that green, I mean, I wasn't really thinking of St. Patrick's Day, okay? But it's like that Soul Train, and he's leaning from side to side, and like doing this like jacket. And I think that's somewhere the conversion from like monochrome and black and white into the I'm thinking, I'm not real sure if it's really that, involving like the pastel colors being 73 Egypt and like Israeli, but Technicolor. And he's grabbing his collar, and based over the years about a Colonel, a Kendall, and Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln Night Vision Shuttle Government Stargate program, and the Colonel in programming involving SAN software, or what deed restrictions are. All this information with Trump saying "Make America Great Again" has lit somewhere in my mind of 1972, COVID-19, which is something that I'm not sure if it's actually considered like still going on, but I think I'm still hearing information about it. This year, 2026, January, and pretty much like when my father passed away, like in May of 2018, COVID-19 was becoming quite a common stay. It's like on the news every day, somewhere about the entire planet. To me, it was like just me seeing it as a method of banking involving the idea of like something phenomenally huge as a method of banking. Um, Also, knowing that COVID-19 1972 and like the value of like money, the world and school and like all kinds of stuff. Anyway, it's already going on like what's that? 50 minutes and 55 seconds, and really, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of like take take this and maybe take a break here in like a few seconds here. But anyway, I want to include that because I seem to be like really, I've been seeing my blood vessels stand on, and it seems that my main arteries has really been controlled by remote control. Going through the Stargate program and realizing that 1972, if there was like anything about Make America Great Again, I'm assuming that it would automatically be something involving the pituitary gland and the hormones and how it affects a guy, like in relation. I mean, like where it matters, okay? Not limited to, but and including. Um, but it seemed to be that one weekend, there would be, the Marmalade Sky thing of that one song, Lucy in the Sky, and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Um, it seemed to be the sets of two, um, analytically, symbolically, alphanumerically, and um, all that, yeah. But I want to include that because it seemed that would be maybe the thought of some idea of like, I mean, really, did I experience an operation and I'm just like now really realizing it because of the memory of like everything in chronological just many years. This is, from like 1972. Really, even my birth years become, um, but 1972 is Make America Great Again has ultimately led to the idea of like Great Britain and Hill HX-50 helicopter, and I mean even Utah in June being like the alphabetics of 50, and a Mormon church baptism. Me actually experiencing something of like that ultimately led to like me like looking for answers other than bibliography, because I mean like a guy knocks on my door, okay, after this thing I was like experiencing, okay, and it seemed to be like almost like a perception waiting to as a telepathic witness. I mean, for real, okay. And it's like like after it happened, it's kind of like I was hearing like the thought and like feeling like the like emotions and personalities at different heights in the sky. I mean, for real. I mean, it's kind of like I became like a consciously hearing something, a little bit more than the thought of maybe a persuasive technique of thinking. And it's kind of like a magnetic, like uplifting, okay, and not something about the thing about yeah, the thing about the alphabetics was like Robert and escrow and heart god. I'll kind of like leave it at that for right now, and like the voice, yeah, about that, like yeah, so like all that stuff about the idea of information and Trump saying "Make America Great Again" is kind of like there'd been certain factors about what access has meant in this home. And it's really been the thought that I've mentioned it several times. Like here recently, I've been like thinking about all this, like and talking like have you been really controlling my erection by remote control or access? I mean, in that way, and all that terminology of like mousetrap and monopoly and operation and reference as every cloud has his lining. Make America Great Again. I mean, if anything, it would have been that weekend. I'm assuming Surgeon General and Stargate before, like in the neighborhood, not necessarily going through the circuit. Although watching television might be the accusation of, you know, you're watching a circuit in progress, like on television. Okay, I mean, if that's the only thing about COVID-19 in 1972, um, about that one particular weekend of the Marmalade Sky, it would have had to been then of something of the pituitary gland and something of main arteries that I'm actually realizing because I'm seeing my blood vessels stand on my arm. I mean, unlike any time in my memory, and it seemed to me that that would have been probably the weekend based upon the games. Oh yes, the games. You know, I don't know if that would be EA Sports, but that's not really my thought of EA Sports involving YouTube or auditing legal media. I'm considering what I'm seeing in my home. That mousetrap is something like idea like I'm not going to look on my drummer, okay? It's not that I'm not one, okay? Um, yeah, but I'm thinking that being on YouTube has been, ultimately me in a tent in this home. Um, I mean, so like, what's the real issue? EA Sports, the humor's bone, or grasping my capacity as like a forecast of like, see, like I really want my 4 inches of my humerus bone back, like on my both sides of my arm, on my humerus bone. Or is it, the attempted, what is that? What is that? Is that a deed restriction between my legs? I mean, like really, at this point, like, who are you trying to kid? A deed restriction between my legs? Like, how does that happen? I mean, is it the accusation I know or don't know? I mean, what would be the conditions of like air quality that's been going on? Has really been the issue. Um, yeah, so like, that is the issue. So are we talking about pituitary glands, main arteries, or is it the idea of maybe information is being provided on YouTube itself, seemingly the issue of actually, being the issue and is the issue and actually being on YouTube and talking about the issue that participates in the issue seem to be really the real issue anyway. So I thought it'd be like really real about it, okay? So like in any case, yeah, so like it's already going like 57 minutes, but yeah. So I mean, I haven't really heard anything about whether or not that that's the idea of um make America great. It's like why like are you gonna make my erection great again? Huh? My blood vessels are actually staining on my arm. Realizing that certain things I actually have been seeing in music videos that refer to the shoulder, yet at the same time, um, women like referring to like the armpit. It's almost like, are you really suggesting the armpit as like a masturbator being affected by his pituitary gland? I mean, is that what all those women like doing it is like about? As suggesting, hey man, is that like a masturbator like having a pituitary gland issue? An armpit? Are you kidding me? I mean, is that making America great again? I mean, is that like body language or what? So like anyway, I'm gonna take a break. Okay, there it is. Okay.